Hi, my friends. Coach Bess here. I am sitting here in my desert paradise here in Tucson, Arizona. Actually, I live in Vail, right outside of Tucson. And I've been kind of thinking about this, and I wanted to do kind of a little message for you coaches in here because I think it's funny how we can choose in life what perspective we literally do choose what perspective to have on things. And here's what I mean by that. Who would have thought that this Midwestern farm girl who grew up with the lushest, greenest trees and grass and sweet corn fields and a little forest about a quarter mile from my house. There was a creek that ran through the front yard of our farm, and there was a forest that kind of grew up around the creek, and there was wildflowers that grew there. And I remember even edible foods grew wild where I was a kid in northern Illinois outside of Chicago. We lived on a sweet corn farm. You know, who would have thought that this Midwestern kid would have ended up out here in the desert, and not only out here, but loving it. I love it. I love my desert. Now, granted, hey Suzanne, I see you, girl. Granted, I've lived here a little while now, so I've had a chance to embrace and adopt a new version of beauty. But you know, when I remember the culture shock, I was 9 years old when we first moved to Arizona, and I distinctly remember experiencing true culture shock. We moved to a border town on the Mexican-American border, and hardly anyone spoke English. It was mostly Spanish speaking, still to this day. And here we were, blue-eyed, blonde-haired. I'm kind of gray now, but I started out blonde-haired. Little Norwegian kid from Illinois ends up in a border town, living in the desert. Crazy, right? Here's what my thoughts are about that. I remember when things started turning around for me in my thoughts around what beauty was. And I remember when the shock started fading, and I distinctly remember I was about 11 years old, having a conversation with God and deciding to open my mind to new ideas of beauty, to a new perspective of what beauty and growth and green could be in my life. And all these years later, I'm still living in the rocks. I'm still living at the foot of the mountain. That's my mountain that I see literally from my back porch. Let me show you guys. Back porch is there. Hubby's doing a project over there. And this is our yard. And that's my mountain. And, you know, I love it here. And I come outside and I breathe, and I feel beauty here, and I see beauty here. And I actually appreciate every little bloom more than I did when I was in the rural Illinois farmland, green, gorgeous, lush beauty that I grew up in. I almost took it for granted. I took rain for granted when we lived in Illinois. I took water for granted. I took weather for granted. And out here in the desert, I've had to change my mind about what's beauty and what is precious and what not to take for granted, and how to enjoy and relish the rains and the small moments and the blooms, each bloom. I even find beauty in these rocks that you would just look at it and see a rock. I actually have a way of finding beauty in those, and even in like cactus skeletons, we call them, but they're dead cactuses that are just kind of like going back into the ground. They're so beautiful. We find this strange beauty in them. So my point is, in relation to us as coaches and building a business and living this life that we've each been given, I guess my point is, have you ever found yourself in a situation where your previous thoughts or previous idea of what's beautiful or lush or enjoyable or brings you happiness Have you ever found yourself needing to almost open your mind to a new or completely different view? And did you realize at that time that it was a choice? So let's talk about this, and can you share your experiences with this with me in the comments below? Can you relate to this at all from any area of your life? Have you had massive change take place and you've had to grasp a new idea around it and see it through a different lens? Have you had any kind of change happen that was disastrous or tragic or hard or something you didn't plan for or want? And did you have to walk through learning to find the beauty in it, or to find the blessing in it, or to just see it through a whole new set of eyes? I want to hear from you if this is something you can relate to. I'm just thinking the thoughts as I'm sitting out here in my dusty gravel with my dusty granite rock behind me, breathing my dusty desert air and thinking, God, I'm so lucky. I love this place. I love my house. I love my backyard. I remember a time when I would have looked at this, because I did, when I first moved here, and think, oh my God, it's so desolate. It's the desert, and it's so dusty, and it's so desolate, and it doesn't rain, and there's no weather here. And oh my gosh, it's so brown, different shades of brown. I remember when I thought like that. And I think life does that to us with lots of different things. This is very symbolic. This could be relationships. This could be our dreams, what we dreamed before for ourselves and our future and our business and our lives, and what we're now seeing unfold. And is it different than what we dreamed because of maybe loss, or because of something tragic, or because of something out of our control? Our move, when my parents brought us here when I was 9 to that border town that's about 2 hours from where I live now, our move was due to extremely tragic circumstances. Our beloved pastor's wife had passed away from cancer, and we were involved in a very fundamental, almost kind of a cult, and that cult experienced a split, and me and my siblings lost every school age friend that we had, every relationship that we had known up to that point, that we pretty much had grown up with, we had to walk away from due to the split, and we ended up out here. So we were in a desert of more than just the dust. We were in a spiritual, relational desert, and we were still not out of the cult mentality, but out of the relationships that had brought the joyous side. So maybe you guys can relate. Are you currently facing something that looks dusty, desolate, like a desert, and not because of anything you've done or wanted, but because of what life has dealt you? And now you want to see, how can you, instead of just resisting the thing that has brought sorrow or loss or tragedy, how can you embrace it, even though you didn't want it? And no one wants pain. No one wants the stuff we deal with, right? But now that you're here in your desert of sorts, how can you find the beauty in it? Talk to me about this. I want to hear your stories. Have you ever felt like you're in a desert? As I talk to you here from my literal desert here in the Southwest, maybe you can relate in a spiritual sense, and you've lived through spiritual deserts. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear your stories and your lessons from life. Let's share with each other. I think it'll help us get to know each other better, but also someone who reads this, your comment, if you do comment and share, they could be changed and encouraged and transformed by your sharing. Guys, let's share. Talk to me about what you think. I hope this blesses you. Have a blessed evening, everyone.